Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to episode 166 of our LinkedIn live stream Industry Insights. Jason, how are you doing today?
It's always a good day to share some ideas with you, my friend.
Well, great to be here, and just sort of a forewarning or shadowing, I guess is a better way to say it. Might be one of my last episodes for a little bit, so very happy to be coming in for a little while and hanging out with you. We are continuing double clicking on our aspects of some of our favorite highlights from our 2024 data protection trends research. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that very soon. Before we jump in earnest, wanted to give a shout out to everyone. Say a quick reminder, please let us know where you're tuning in from. We're coming on 4 different platforms that we're going live with. We also persist this out on our YouTube site, get a few thousand other people that view there. But if you happen to be watching us live, feel free to join the conversation, give a question or a comment to what we were chatting about, but give a shout out to where you're tuning in from, and we'll reference that via a global map in just a couple of moments here, and then we'll do it again at the very end. But Jason, let's just level set, even though some folks may have seen us decomposing this research. Let's just do a quick level set on what is data protection trends from Veeam.
Yeah, so it's published by Veeam, but the data isn't. So basically what happens is for the last several years, Dave and I both come from analyst backgrounds in the past. And so we have been tasked with kind of chartering. We go out to third-party research and analyst firms. They go and ask their panel. So these are not Veeam customers. I guess technically, Dave, we have 13% of market share. So 12 or 13% of the respondents are Veemers. The other 88% is the rest of the planet, right? And so the idea is we're asking all these unbiased IT leaders and IT implementers who are responsible for data protection strategies, what are you thinking about? What are the big things that you are trying to address each year along the way? This year's report just came out in January, so it's reflective of survey work that happened, gosh, only 2-3 months ago, November-ish, along the way. You can see on the left-hand side, it's all enterprises, right? So had to have at least 1,000 users or up in the organization. See that pie chart across? And if we look on those green bullets on the left, this week, we're going to talk about cloud-powered solutions. And what I mean by that is last week, if you chimed in, we watched what are the data protection strategies that organizations are looking at for protecting their clouds. We're going to flip that around this week, Dave. We're going to talk about where does cloud-powered protection fit into the modern IT strategies of 2024. How's that sound to you?
Yeah, outstanding. I always like to use the phrase, you owe it to yourself to get educated. We're going to give you a link to how to download the entire research, the entire report. It's not a Veeam commercial, we promise, but it does give you some insights that, in our opinion, you cannot get anywhere else. So let's tee up the first one, do a little myth busting, perhaps.
A little myth busting, and it's one of our favorite slides. It's that darn 4-letter word that everyone uses, tape. So there's always this rumor year after year. In fact, when cloud companies were first starting to add cloud to data protection strategies, there was this idea of, hey, if you get your data up in a cloud, you're not going to need tape anymore. And tape is icky and bad and unreliable and all those things. And what they were pointing at, Dave, was the tape from 20 years ago. Now, Dave, I don't know of anything else in IT that looks the same as it did 20 years ago. And tape doesn't look like it did 20 years ago either. MTBF is as low as any kind of media you can get. It is robust. It is economical. All those things that people are looking for. Dave, give me an amen. Let's talk about the fact that this is not the year that cloud kills tape.
Yeah, tape's still not dead yet. I like to somewhat joke I'll go to my grave as one of the last tape apologists. There are valid reasons to consume any different technologies, but the idea, if you're on one of them, getting off of it because you think you might be the last one on that solution, that technology. What we kind of want to myth bust here is if you've already made an investment in tape, you're not alone, and there's good reasons to actually have data on multiple types of media, as well as to continue to get good asset management out of what you've already deployed things in. So we did have a quick question. I'll hit it now, even though we're going to define it very specifically later. That Matthew asked, what is BAS, what is DRAS? So acronym soup here. BAS, simply backup as a service. DRAS, disaster recovery as a service. And it's possible, though, Jason, Matthew is actually even double clicking on that and trying to get us to say, what do we think these terms mean, or what do we think the industry thinks those terms mean? In which case, Matthew's a brilliant straight man, because we're going to get to that soon. We did ask, what does these two things, BAS and DRAS, mean to you? Why do you care about them? So just doubling back on tape, and want to remind folks, in this slide here, the QR code, you can download the entire report. But, tape, cloud, on-premise, premises, want to get the plural in there. I always cringe when I hear the singular of premise. But technologies such as SSD, HDD, tape, and increasingly cloud utilization, which underneath the covers are using all of these technologies, remain viable, don't they?
They do. And really, just like snapshots or replicas didn't replace backups, right? So snapshots are going to give you your absolute fastest copy, your verting blocks in place on the primary storage. Replicas going to have a ready-to-go copy someplace else. So you have survivable, ready to launch. Oh, by the way, it's always current. So if you blow up or delete the current copy, it deletes in all the replicas. Backup, previous versions over time, right? So you get this wonderful triangle in data protection that backups and snapshots and replicas complement each other. And what this slide really says is that above and beyond what you're doing for disk, which is going to be your fastest on-prem recovery medium, tape and cloud both have great options, right? You have 7-year retention windows, or Dave, you got 25-year retention windows for patient records or patent records, 50-year retention windows. You're going to tape. Right? You want a copy that you can light up 5 minutes after a flood or a hurricane or ransomware attack hits, you're powering up from cloud, right? So again, you get this wonderful triangle between disk and tape and cloud. Use each for what they're great at. Long-term, low-cost retention versus agile, anywhere you want it, warm it up, do secondary things, versus fastest copy you can recover from is going to be on-prem. Use the triangle for what it's good for. I love the fact that out of the 1,200 enterprises that took the survey this year, they all got it right, right? Only 1% of organizations said they don't use tape. By the way, 1% uses tape for everything, right? So this is okay. Don't apologize for that 4-letter word. You should apologize for other 4-letter words, but not that one. So, Dave, we want to hit the map first, and then we'll come back to, so what does this mean moving forward?
Yeah, good question. And I think we may actually still be populating the map because we got so many entries coming in. So if you haven't yet, be sure and just put a shout out. We're quadcasting on 4 different platforms live. While we're on that, though, meaning give a shout out and a comment, did have a question saying, hey, I haven't used Veeam yet. I think this is interesting, your data protection, research, your presentations. Thought about using Veeam, would like a demo. You can actually download a inhibited version of the product, meaning a community edition. Doesn't time bomb out, by the way. And you can download that straight off the Veeam site. We also have free Veeam education, because oftentimes people find it very easy to install and configure, but we can actually even guide you through that. We'd be happy to hook you up with some folks who can even help you along that journey. But having said that, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just going to pile on. One of the fun things about how Veeam works is the same trial copy, if you want to call it that you can download, that I actually use to protect all my servers and infrastructure down in Dallas, is the same stuff that is trusted by Fortune 500. The features are all there. The bits are still there. It's the same stuff. Enterprises use faster gear than I do, but that's the only difference. So yeah, please feel free to try it. The other thing I would point out to you, by the way, if you're new to the program, is our Tuesday shows tend to talk about what the industry is doing, probably looking at the why modern data protection matters, really without a Veeam plug. If you do our Thursday shows, the Tech Bite shows, they do the how, right? Yep. So we're going to talk about why you need to be looking at modern data protection architectures and things to think about. They're going to show you how Veeam products actually meet those goals. So yeah, and please keep the comments piling on. Dave, is it map time?
It is map time. Let's check this out. Okay, so looking at the United States, states-wise, we've got Colorado, Texas, Ohio, and Georgia. RDC, we've got Costa Rica down there with the tip. And we're actually opening up a center, about 100 plus people in Costa Rica. So shout out to the entire area down there. And if we look across rest of world, interesting. Finland, Jason, is maybe a newish, if not brand new, one for our series. So welcome there. And we're about to make Jason really happy when we go to some steak eating places like Argentina and Brazil.
Those people know food. Down there, they know food, Dave. And good wine.
And, we love it when a large geography turns green. Also see South Africa, India. Actually, this weekend, I'm headed to India for a couple stops in Mumbai and Lucknow. And shout out Jordan, who we haven't seen. I feel like there's one other country we're not getting to. But we'll figure, and my geography is so limited mentally, I'm not getting there to the right of India, but I promise we'll give you a shout out here when we come back and revisit just a little bit later. So, Jason, let's go back to the question, which I think is a good one. What's BAS and DRAS? Yeah, we can talk through what the acronyms mean. Part of India. Okay, my bad. Wow. Okay, learned something new. So, BAS and DRAS, let's take BAS first. What do we think people might be interested in?
Yeah, so you're going to notice this is an older green slide, so hopefully none of the Veeam brand folks are watching today. But I pulled this out the last minute because this is actually one of our older research projects. But it was a great ad. Was it Matthew that was asking what is BAS and DRAS? So let's grab that slide and talk through that. So one of the questions that gets asked in one of the other surveys, not the data protection trends, but actually one that's called cloud protection trends, actually asks, what does BAS mean to you? And so the long lines are choose all the things that apply. And then the short lines is what's the most important thing to you for BAS. Now, bottom line, if I was going to generalize BAS, it's about being in a cloud service. It's about running the software up there, or at least managing it from up there. But that's one opinion. This is 1,700 folks' opinions. And Dave, I want to point out two things that I think are really interesting about this particular data point from 2023. The first one is you can see it's stacked in most common order, and the most common response for 2023's data was that the backup server software, that it runs in a cloud instance, right? So you're not necessarily pulling down a piece of metal and going next, finish on setup.exe and running it from there. So that's the number one thing that folks are looking for from that. But what I think is probably more interesting is the number two most common is also the number one most important. Those two kind of change positions. The longest of the bright yellow lines is what's the most important thing. And interestingly enough, in last year's data, the most important thing was that it be delivered by the original vendor of the software itself, right? So in this case, the example was Acme software being sold as Acme as a service under the acme.com/brand, which, Dave, we made a little announcement a couple months ago around Veeam being delivered as a service or facilitating for some key workloads. How about we talk about that? Because this option has been bubbling up over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been an interesting trend. What's our response to that?
Yeah, so Veeam, we have about 28,000 Veeam Cloud Service partners globally that take Veeam technologies, deliver them as a service, whether that's simply being a repository in the sky, fully managed, either backup as a service, disaster as a service, in some cases even migration as a service. One of my favorite examples, Jason's very niche, but in the United States, in the Northeast region, there is a service provider that just focuses on dental offices. My dad's a retired dentist, so I appreciate some of the unique challenges there. But we love our partner ecosystem because there's a good case of where there is a provider that not only understands the country, the geography in that country, such as snowstorms and things that could be unique to them, but also the specific vertical that someone may be in. But to your point, we started recognizing some of these trends about 4 years ago, bubbling up of, hey, we might want as a consumer, a data center professional, to have the vendor run this on their own behalf for us and not have to go through other parties. Well, the interesting thing there is we did make an acquisition of an Australian technology, CT4 Cirrus, which we run now predominantly for M365 workloads as well as Azure and introducing others. We'll expand that out, Jason, globally to take on not only other workloads, but to do exactly some of the things on this list, such as the number 3 area here, a web-based management portal. I just want to be able to have a control plane that I can manage all of my perhaps geographically distributed instances or sites from one location.
But I want to switch gears on this for a second. So this is BAS, and Matthew is asking what is BAS and DRAS. And so I gotta give a shout out. I actually got a coffee mug made for me a few years back. It says, why BAS when you can DRAS? And what I think is important about this is when you look on the what does BAS mean to folks, yeah, they want the software to run in the cloud. Yeah, they want it more and more want it to be delivered by the first party itself. And that's interesting, but that's really just get your data out of the building. Right. I think the thing which is probably more powerful, and one of the reasons why I love our partner ecosystem, right, is because if the only thing you're doing is getting your data out of the building, then you're still have to be the smartest person in the room, right? You're still managing that. However, when we asked organizations a follow-up question in the same survey, again, unbiased IT leaders, what they were looking for, when it comes to DR as a service, disaster recovery as a service, we asked them, why do you use DRAS as opposed to your own facilities? And one of the things that comes out of that really, really clearly, I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, is expertise, right? The idea that you don't have to, when you work with a managed service provider, that's not us, right? So we're providing the capability, but with all of our VCSPs, what'd you say, 13,000 partners, all of which they know their customers, they know their environments, they know their goals, they're the first person that's going to get called when something bad happens, right? Those managed service providers, what they're providing, not just a repository to recover from, they're going to light up for you. And they're going to provide and according to this, they're going to provide implementation expertise for application expertise and planning and documentation and testing. So I'm a huge, huge fan of managed service providers that provide DRAS because of all of these expertise-laden capabilities, not just get your data out of the building. Dave, can I get an amen?
Yeah, absolutely that, and I think so. When we look at BAS, if we put a bow on this, what BAS is potentially multiple things. It's a repository in the sky. It's someone that manages everything like a concierge service. It could be somewhere in between. Got a question, I believe it's Jamie. I could be wrong on the name, apologize. But okay, can we deploy BAS and DRAS on our local data center? And the answer is yes. It's interesting because you can actually take a control plane, meaning something that's a cloud-based service that can manage your on-premises activities around backup and disaster recovery. You could also further utilize that technology or capability to get an additional copy, as Jason likes to say, get your data out of the building, do an electronic vault, if you will, of that data. And at Veeam, we also envision capabilities of infusing additional partner ecosystem services back into that mix. And you'll hear more about us on that. Also want to give a shout out to James, who is in Mumbai, says, welcome to coming to Mumbai soon. Thank you very much, James. Super shout out. Also, Matthew liked your comment on Brazilian food and thinks it's absolutely wonderful as well. And we've got a new map hit that we could do here in a little bit. So while we're readying that up, so what I think we're seeing here is some trend-wise, Jason, just like we like to say, the cloud is not one thing. It is many different forms and many different reasons why you might investigate the cloud. Same is true for as a service as it relates to availability.
Absolutely. One of the more interesting trends that I'm a big fan of is the idea of platform ops or plat ops, where you start to see the IT teams, the architecture teams, thinking less about they're going to deliver services and more around they're going to deliver platforms like basically a private cloud that then allow the business units to then consume services as they see fit, which actually goes back to Jamie's question, right? So can you do BAS and DRAS on-prem? Absolutely. So when you start thinking about things like how a business unit might do cost center chargebacks, and then you're standing up what's essentially BAS and DRAS within the underlying platform operations environment, and then they're consuming you as a service. When you start combining things like abstracted management planes and chargeback, you get basically as a service where your IT team in some cases becomes the MSP for all the other business units that are out there. So it's a fun way to change those Legos around. And then over time, what you will also find is that when you do that, you start to alleviate some of the skills necessary to actually run the underlying plat ops, which is a great time to then bring in the MSPs, because once you've abstracted that layer, whether they're running on your private cloud or whether they're consuming services through somebody else's managed cloud, starts to get really, really fuzzy. And you are now on your way to a true hybrid cloud architecture where you only are adding value and not babysitting infrastructure. So love the instinct of where you're going with that, Jamie, and I definitely think there's some value to that. So there's also value to checking the map again, because hopefully we got some more countries out there. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, we do. It's really in United States, we've got North Carolina,
All right.
and over in Europe, we've got Italy, which came in, so shout out there. And then in Africa, we've got Morocco and Tunisia. So, which is really interesting. We're getting some locations where we don't often have people tuning in live from. Really give a shout out to all that. Thank you very much for all the engagement. Keep it coming. And we want to be able now to double click on just a little bit more. What's our next double click item?
Yeah, so far what we've talked about is that the cloud is not going to kill tape. We've talked about trying to level set what BAS and DRAS really are delivering for customers. So now let's look at this year's data. For the 2024 Data Protection Trends Report, one of the questions that was asked was, what is the likelihood your organization will utilize BAS or DRAS for any of its servers over the next 2 years? And Dave, 7 out of 8. 88% of organizations say they will almost certainly or very likely protect at least some of their servers using BAS or DRAS. So I love the fact they're getting data out of the building. I also love the idea they're using managed services as a big part of that. They don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Somebody else is going to monitor their jobs for them and give them some agility for when that worst day happens. I love the fact that 7 out of 8 are thinking about this already. I think 1 out of 8 are going to wonder why they didn't do it sooner.
Yeah, I'm always interested in boundary conditions. So here at roughly 12 o'clock, 0% said that no, we certainly don't have any interest in BAS or DRAS for our servers. Only 1% said, yeah, it's kind of unlikely that we're interested in any BAS or DRAS for our servers. The 1 out of 8 is largely that 11% that said, possibly we'll look into it, maybe. But I think what we're really seeing, because 7 out of 8 percentage-wise, just a huge number at 88+% here, what we're seeing is a shift. And the shift isn't, I want to be completely out of this business and I want someone to do everything on my behalf. That's the one other myth I really want to help bust, if you will, Jason, is that in the past, managed services were sometimes viewed as, I just want to wash my hands of this, let someone else completely take this over. That is not what the data is telling us that people are interested in. Rather, they're saying, I don't want to rack and stack it. I don't want to deploy it. I don't want to be responsible for the minutia. However, I do want to have observability, control, the ability to affect policy, the ability to centralize operations and not have to have teams of people geographically dispersed. Or even if I have to remote, I don't want to RDP into things, especially in this day and age of security concerns. So what people are looking for from an as-a-service model is actually multiple different things, but it's enabled through the technology of having something that's centralized in a SaaS-based control plane, the ability to leverage or add value-added services onto that. And by the way, we should point out that ability to add on different services, that's a continuum, meaning we see people experience this over time. We've got other research data points that show once people start to consume some of these services, their appetite for doing this more fully, more completely increases. So in my opinion, that also is a situation where they got it right. We're going to trial this for a limited number of use cases. We're going to get some production experience with this once we're convinced the POC or proof of concept goes well. Then we're going to actually deploy this further and for more capabilities.
So I love how you said that. If I were to try to down, I would start with the idea that once you know that your data is safely out of the building, once you know that you don't have to babysit the jobs, you don't have to patch the servers, once you can take those things for granted, then you can start to focus on the things that actually really matter, right? And so that gets you back to the why BAS versus DRAS, or why BAS when you can DRAS, right? So it's one thing to have your data out of the building. It's another thing to say, look, I'm just going to light it up. Right, but you can only do that once you know you have survivable data. Once you know you're going to have clean data on that after that cyber event. Once you know that you don't have to babysit the jobs because someone else is going to be watching those jobs for you. They're going to call you the first time something goes bad. So absolutely. By the way, a kudos and thanks to Mehdi. Can we get the presentation at the end of the session? Actually, every slide that we cover, if you hit the QR code in the upper right-hand corner, we'll also give you the URL at the end of the event. All the charts are there. In fact, when you go to that website, there's even a place where you can download all the charts on their own outside the report, and you can use them in your own blogs. You can use them in your own presentations to your senior management. But yes, all of this data is free. We just want to help you have better conversations along the way. Dave, we got one more data point. I know we only got about 2 more minutes left, but I do want to cover one last thing. So 7 out of 8 organizations are likely to use BAS or DRAS for at least some of their servers. I think there's one more thing that I think is interesting, though. And what does that mean in the case of DRAS versus, say, the multi-data center approach? And so just in the interest of time, I'm going to fast forward through this. There's a good analysis on this in the report itself. What you're looking at on the green is, by the way, each year, we've been asking this question for a long time. So there's 5 years worth of actual data, 2020 through 2024. In 23, they also told us what they thought they were going to do in 2 years. That gives you 25. In 24, they said what they're going to do in 2 years. That gives you 26. We have a 7-year run rate on this data representing 13,000 IT organizations. But here's what it says. The green data is when organizations are using multiple data centers. So that is East Coast to West Coast in the US. That is UK to Germany if you're in Europe. That is Perth to Sydney. If you're in Australia, wherever you happen to be, pick 2 geos that are far enough away to be protected from each other, close enough you can get the manpower across. That's what a double data center approach is, and we love double data centers. There's a huge amount of agility that comes out of that. But that market is roughly 30% of enterprise organizations are doing that dual data center self-managed DR model. That's the green on the bottom of the screen. The blue are the organizations that are using the cloud as their DR site. And that includes both hyperscale, so Amazon and Azure hosting. It also includes, my favorite, DR as a service. And Dave, take a look. When this survey first started asking about, 23% of organizations, 1 in 4, were using the cloud as their DR site. By 2026, 1 out of 2, right? All of the growth that you see year over year in where folks are gaining BCDR capabilities are coming from clouds for small businesses because they didn't have a secondary data center, for large enterprises because they see the agility that comes out of that. And again, all those folks get better experts on tap when they go to a managed service. Dave, last thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, let's hit a couple, I'll call them teasers, things that are upcoming. This Thursday, we're going to do a double click on the Veeam Threat Center, a deep dive on our Tech Bytes. So be sure to check that out. It's a consolidated, visually very interesting, centralized location to be able to look at all of the resiliency aspects of your Veeam deployments. 1 week from today, we're going to do a special announcement and have a live stream around an Kyndryl and Veeam partnership, which is quite extensive, and we'll double click on that. And then also we'll show you a video here very soon, but our VeeamON, our flagship conference for VeeamON 2024 will be in June in Fort Lauderdale in Florida. So we're going back to Florida. We were in Miami last year. And then let's hit the slide just to double click on where people can get some of the insights we've been speaking about. Here's a QR code. You can also email us. We'll put into the chat the actual short URL link as well if you're concerned about QR codes. And then now if we just think about going forward, after the Kyndryl episode, we'll get back into double clicking on some other of our favorite research points around data protection trends. And we'll actually even have more research after that. Cloud protection trends we'll get into. So Our goal here on Tuesdays is to be able to give you information in part that we don't think you can get anywhere else, but also information that only has a modicum of Veeam interest associated with it. We try to keep it fairly unbiased and be pretty honest when we're actually coming into a little bit of a Veeam specific section.
Well said. Been a great show. So take a week or two off, Dave. I know you're going to be traveling. We've got some special guests lined up to cover the next 2 while you're gone. But we're going to keep talking about data protection trends at least through the end of February.
Thanks for checking out this episode. You can look at all of our episodes on our YouTube channel under our Veeam page. Be sure to check out this entire report as well. And stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you on the next live stream.
Your choice, your partnership, our journey together, Veeam is number one because we have the number one community on the planet. We would not exist today, let alone flourish, without these 450,000 plus customers around the world.
Technology and innovation starts with the crowd in this room and the crowd that is online. This is about your business. This is about the market and taking it forward. And we thank you for your partnership in that. We keep your business running.
So you know we go big. Be ready.
Who's ready to get this party started? Thank you for all those that participated in Lab Wars.
Chris Rustin, $10,000.